Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week we're going to continue our Complicated Failures Festival with our second installment, the Coen Brothers, Ladykillers.
Let's dive on in. Alright everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us on all the places and spaces that people what?
Listen to podcasts, find good media, whatever you do. Remember, we're on YouTube as well if you're listening on a podcast.
Yes,
that's another version of what we do. And
there's a little more going on. There's some visual jokes.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. And you liked my Pale Man joke with Mitch McConnell.
Oh my God, it was so good. I am always up for a shitty Photoshop joke. It is like, mwah, I love it. I love it so much.
Well, we got tons of that, so please like and subscribe. We appreciate you listening. Let's get into Ladykillers. This is such a fascinating fest because, well, one thing I've realized, how closely connected our fest is to Tom Hanks. Because Spielberg, last time, not in that movie, but very close to Tom Hanks. This movie has Tom Hanks. Our next movie has Tom Hanks as well with Cloud Atlas.
That's right. So it is true. Yeah. Well, I think it's a numbers game. I think when you're in a lot of movies, and because we're talking about luminary directors,
sure,
like the fact that Hanks might be in a couple of stinkers along the way, it's like, to the Bad Santa quote, they can't all be winners. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just the mantra for this festival. Now, I remember all the time whenever we would talk about the Coens and you would talk about a weak film that the Coens had made.
Yes,
Ladykillers.
I was planning on saying that.
Always the one that gets yanked out.
Yep.
Which is interesting because I think things like Intolerable Cruelty are way less interesting. They're fine movies.
Yeah.
But they're not very good Coen brother movies. Like a Coen brother movie is an event usually, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think to kind of the point you're saying is the worst Coen Brothers movie is better than most people's movies, or name X director, whatever it is in there.
Because the expectation is so high.
Yeah, for sure. And this one definitely gets thrown in there. I think, Intolerable Cruelty. Burn After Reading's kind of whatever.
I like Burn After Reading.
That one's okay. Yeah, it's a little odd. I think it's odd like this one is, though.
Yeah, it's a weird... we'll dive more into...
Have you seen this before? Actually seen it? I know you've heard the criticism, but have you actually seen
No,
this?
I had never seen it before.
So I'm very interested to see where you go with this, because I truly, this is like an unlikely cast of characters basically trying to rob a casino. It's a remake of a 1955 film.
Starring Alec Guinness.
That's right, Alec Guinness.
And Peter Sellers is in it, too. It's a very British film, which, again, is very interesting. And I think that's something that the Coens do a lot, is that they'll have an interest in one thing and then an interest in something completely different. And they're like, let's put that peanut butter on that chocolate, and to see what it does. And most of the time, it works really, really well. Mm-hmm. This is not one of those times, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's not like some masterpiece like Fargo or something like that, or No Country for Old Men, where, I think also when you're remaking something, sometimes certain things can get in the way and you have a certain vision in your head. But I mean, you look at something like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That's a remake, right?
Yeah.
And
it's like a weird
their own
remake
take on it. And
sequel.
I kind of wish they would have taken that, like their own kind of approach angle with it. Now, it still has all of the great elements of a Coen Brothers movie. Right away, you got some like distinctive music, certain types of characters with funny names, his Tom Hanks' name is Goldsmith Higgins Dord, PhD.
Right. So, and it's fantastic.
It is.
Like,
it is.
That's fantastic.
And Coens always have good names in this. But to me, this is probably one of their weaker movies. But at the same time, it's also how is this any worse than some Jared Hess movie out there, right?
You're not wrong.
It's just as stupid and goofy, and it's supposed to be stupid and goofy. So I'm going to defend this movie a little bit because I don't think it's that bad. I actually think Tom Hanks is having a lot of fun here.
So he's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
He is having fun, and you can tell he's having fun, and that's fun to watch.
Yes.
I completely agree That's the best part of this movie.
Marlon Wayans? No.
So here's
get me out of here.
And here's the thing. And you know, I wrote this down as an observation much further down in my notes, but maybe this is a good thing to start with, which is the Coens do have a certain formulaic makeup that they use all the time. But the thing is that their formulaic makeup is so strange that most of the time it's hard to put your finger on it unless it doesn't work. Okay? And here, it doesn't work. So all of a sudden, all of the pulleys and wires that make up what the Coens do are sort of laid
just
bare.
A little off kilter.
Or just like you suddenly see them. And so, you know, here we go. This is very interesting. Here are their tropes. Weird, usually dated cinematic references that only movie nerds get.
Sure. That's good.
Outdated or silly dialects, right? like people talk funny and they love it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anachronistic characters and places. So characters that are out of place. So you think of like Big Lebowski.
Sure.
It's this, you know, LA noir story, but then you've got Jeff Lebowski as the main character, so that doesn't make any sense. Social and political subtext, so you think about things like Barton Fink, or even later With a Burn After Reading or something like that.
Yeah.
And then bizarre humor that only they find funny, and by dint, then it becomes funny because you're like, I've never seen that before. Like, why is that in this movie? But here, so many of those elements either don't work or are slapped together so quickly that you're like, wait, we aren't even given time to breathe with some of this stuff. So like this whole opening montage with like, first of all, I love the sheriffs in the sleepy town, and Grandma comes in.
Coen loves dumb cops.
They love dumb cops, and the whole like left my wallet in El Segundo, that whole thing that's very funny, and it was very, very promising. But then
we get Marva.
Yes.
Marva Munson.
And then we leave that scene, which is one of our most pivotal characters, to introduce within their own little offshoot movies all of our other characters, but we don't know that they're going to be our characters. It's not like we're introduced to them together and then see this stuff in flashback. We don't know what we're looking at.
So montage is a little early in the movie.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, here's the Chinese guy with the Hitler mustache. Is he the one that we're supposed to care about, or is he a one-off? And then we're like, and here's the weird football player, and it's from his POV, and we're like, and then a dog almost dies because it's in a gas mask, and we're like, I don't know what any of this is supposed to mean.
We should have had Hank say something like, "All right, let's get a team together," and then go.
or like it's like a Wes Anderson kind of thing where he throws down a map and it's got all their photos on it, and then it goes into the photos, and then we do that. But none of that's here yet, and it felt like a bad Coen Brothers ripoff. Like it didn't feel like it had the nuance and dexterity that they usually do.
Yeah, I could see it lacking nuance But, this is an ensemble movie, and there's a kind of fun cast of characters here. J.K. Simmons is always fun to see. Stephen Root is always fun to see. Like, some regulars and people. And this is J.K. Simmons pretty early, like, I think.
Definitely.
So and they all have their weird quirks. I almost got, like, Ocean Eleven's vibes in parts of this, because they're ripping off a casino, maybe.
Yeah, sure. But it's a heist movie,
yeah. To a degree, But, yeah, maybe some of that nuance has gone a little bit. And I get that. And like you said, not everything can be perfect. But I really walked away like not hating this movie. I have to say.
And I don't think I hated this movie, but again, like having never seen it before, there are these like whimsical montages like that one where I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling in this scene because I'm confused as to what's going on. And that rarely happens to me with something like the Coens.
Sure.
Like they're usually so deft at being able to say, here's how you go into this scene, and then this is how that plays off to the next scene.
I wonder if you didn't have the context of it having, just all you knew was Coen Brothers movie. You didn't know it was panned as maybe critically as one of their worst ones or something. If you would have a different take on it, or if you went in with these preconceptions and
I mean, I did go in with a critical eye. I won't lie. I definitely did. But at the same time, I also I love, to your point, dispelling those myths and being like, unsung masterpiece. Like I love doing that. So, I definitely prefer to go against the grain when it's applicable. But, I think that there's a couple other things here that I feel like confused by. Like, why does this take place in 1996? What's the significance of that?
Have easily
right?
made it modern.
I got really excited in the beginning that one of the very first things that happened was a reference to Tribe Called Quest. I'm like, oh my God, there's a Tribe Called Quest reference in this Coen Brothers movie, and I was like, this might be really fun because you know what? Every time that they do kind of a send up of like Southern Baptist kind of lifestyle, it's usually really funny. Again, things like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Yep.
For a couple of nebbish Jewish guys to be like, "Oh, we're going to really lean into the black gospel world," like that could be really fun. And then how that parlays with someone like Marlon Wayans, and he's like a hip hop dude in the late '90s.
Hop is what she like.
Yeah, and I'm like,
she says.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, there might be a lot here, and instead it's like it's just an idea that they had that they thought would be funny that never came to fruition. And I feel like there's a lot of that in this movie where normally when they do decide to play up a particular trope, like I said, these weird things that only the Coens find funny, they then by proxy become funny to all of us because they care so much about making that into a thing, right? I'm thinking again, of course, all of the local tropes in Fargo become almost their own character there.
Sure.
And that could have happened here, but instead we get like potty humor shit with J.K. Simmons' character of his like bowel, his
IBS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, it felt like way lowbrow, even when the Coens do lowbrow, it's still smart in some weird way that makes it different. But here it's like, he gonna poop his pants. He can't get the money out of the safe because he gonna poop his pants. Like, I'm like, really? This is what we're doing?
Sure. I mean,
it feels pretty fucking like cheap.
No, and I get it. And they've done a ton of comedies in their day too, right?
Yeah.
And all to varying degrees of humor.
In varying degrees of success.
Probably one of the stupider ones. And like I said, I honestly thought of Jared Hess a lot when I'm thinking of like the stuff that he's done and like
it's like a Nacho Libre vibe
and almost honestly I did get a little bit of a Wes Anderson vibe here as well. Like you think of something like Bottle Rocket where it's dumb criminals, right? Basically trying to pull off some gig, and this is a much bigger thing and there's bombs involved and shit like that.
Yes.
And you get this whole cast of characters who all has their own specialty or whatever, and I don't know. I guess I just didn't take it as serious as maybe most people, and maybe that's the reputation that the Coens have, and so we kind of expect them to be serious all the time when it's okay that they're not. I think
So that's a really interesting observation, and I would agree with that. But I would say they take even their total silliness very serious, right? So you go. Yeah, that it's going to be this ridiculous scene in Raising Arizona, but when they pull it off, it's going to look masterful.
Sure.
And there's a couple of moments of that here. I really like the set piece with the bridge and the island of trash and
that's great.
The boat that goes on.
They keep going back to it.
The way it's shot is gorgeous looking. It almost looks like a cartoon or like a miniature. It's very beautiful. And I love that. And the payoff at the end towards that is really funny in moments. Totally. And I liked all that stuff. I think that's great. You were comparing this movie to other movies. I think it's really funny because the premise of you've got these guys in disguise kind of going undercover to be something that they're not, to pull off this heist, but then their own shitty personalities keep getting in the way of their ability to do this thing. Is essentially a movie that they produced 2 years later in Bad Santa. It's basically the same movie. But Bad Santa, for whatever reason, that totally works for me, even though it's just as unbelievable, because you go, well, Marlon Wayans keeps almost fucking everything up so much. Like, they couldn't find another inside man. Like, this moron is the only guy that you guys could find. Like, you've obviously spent a lot of time and money trying to get this thing off the ground. You could do the same thing with Bad Santa, right? And you could be like, Billy Bob Thornton's character, really, he's the best safecracker, that he can be such a fucking train wreck in every other way.
Sure.
That they keep him on the team, but for some reason
and he's really the only dose of non-Southern, pop culture and just modernism, right?
Yeah, that's why I don't understand why this movie takes place in 1996. I'm like, why not have it take place in like 1950, and then Tom Hanks' character doesn't seem insane, because otherwise, like, he seems completely insane, and you go, is that who he actually is? Is that his character that he's putting on to do like, you never really find out.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
It's never really explored.
I do love that their whole front is that they're a band and they all show up.
That
with their
always
instrument.
works. That continues to be funny to me.
It does. It's
the
an ongoing joke.
the weirdest instruments, and that it's some kind of like proto gospel music that is the only. I mean, I guess what I would have loved is if Tom Hanks' character would have been more like Tim Roth's character in Hateful Eight. Where at first he seems very regal and then like once his mask is off, he's got that shitty Cockney accent. He's just a piece of shit.
Gotcha.
It would have been way funnier if when he wasn't whining and dining the women, Tom Hanks' character was some country bumpkin or was like
He's
a womanizer.
charming, right?
But he really isn't. He just kind of continues to be that one.
I don't know. I
character.
think he is. He's one of the only people that keeps the lie going in some kind of convincing fashion, right? Even when they get asked to go play a song and none of them know how to play their instruments, he just quotes Edgar Allan Poe.
I mean, it's the decisions that they made are so strange to me. And I guess, like I said, that it's something that they do all the time and almost always works, right? And it almost always pays off to some degree that I sometimes wonder if they even know that it's going to. Like, before Fargo came out...
You can't 100%.
That's what I'm thinking, is like, did they know ahead of time that like Fargo is going to become as popular as it was? Or if they're like, this is just some shit that we think is funny, so we're going to put this movie together that has all these elements in it. And they did the same thing here, but it's like, for whatever reason, it didn't have the reach that these other things that they normally think are funny that are just weird do, right?
Yeah, I mean, you also think about when it came out as well, what else came out that year, that week that it's competing with, and it just maybe just didn't get it, or it's just a stupid movie that no one really grasped onto. Yeah, you know, I think we still get a lot of fun Coen brothers stuff throughout this movie. I think for the most part it looks really good. It is stupid. I'm not gonna like deny that. And I laughed more than I thought I did. I remember liking it and being like, hey, that wasn't the worst thing. Like, why did it get so panned? You know, it's probably one that people probably pass over. You know, there's certain things that definitely don't work, and you've pointed them out for sure. But as a complicated failure, you know, I think for the most part, I'm kind of fighting for this one. But maybe it's my love for the Coens, my bias. And I guess like I said earlier, just didn't take it as seriously, maybe. And I went into it with a critical eye, but also... Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I tried. Maybe the point of this festival is to go in it without a critical eye, right? And why was it a failure on its own merit, right? Like what happened?
And I feel like that's what I'm trying to grasp at is why it was a failure on its own merit. And I feel like I can completely understand what you're saying, that like as sort of this lighthearted, you know, caper movie, like
that's all it is.
It's fine as that. I think that the pacing is really wrong in a lot of it. There are whole swaths in the middle of this movie I just found really boring. Just not a lot happens.
But then they have those little moments where like Marva's husband's painting, the face changes every time they do something different.
I like that.
Like,
yeah,
there's
again,
those little Coen Brothers moments, right?
There completely are. But then I think of like, okay, another movie of theirs that didn't do as well would be something like Burn After Reading. But there's like a handful of moments, even all these years later, after the one time that I've seen Burn After Reading, I rewound that scene of Brad Pitt getting shot in the face like 25 times. It's one of the hardest moments I've laughed in a movie that I can remember because it comes out of the blue.
More than him getting hit by a car and Meet Joe Black.
Well, yeah, that might just be a weird thing I have about Brad Pitt dying in movies.
I was going to say, there's a trend here.
There is a trend here. But it's just, it comes out of the blue and it changes so many things in the movie and it's so damn funny. And the rowboat with the dildo in it. Like, there are these moments in that movie that I'm like, that is so out there. And it cracks me up so much. And here, there's just not a whole lot of stuff that happens that either A, I didn't see coming, or B, that I was pleasantly surprised because I'd never seen it. Like, there becomes a moment when I was like, okay, now we're starting to cook with gas, is when finally the title of the movie comes into play, which is in the last, like, 25 minutes of the movie that they decide they're going to bump off the old lady, which, again, pacing-wise, I'm like, there's so many more hijinks that you could have done in this. Like, I don't give a shit that they get the money. Like, I want to see him try to bump off this lady. But then she's going around whooping Marlon Wayans' ass like it's a fucking Medea movie. And I'm like, what am I watching? Like, I don't give a shit about any of this. Like, it just feels, again, like cheap shots. You know what I mean? Like, not to the caliber that I expect.
So the movie came out in 2004.
Yes.
So, and it's based in 1996.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I remember seeing that. And again, Marlon Wayans is by far the worst part of this movie.
Dude, this motherfucker has worked with the Coen brothers and Aronofsky, and he's still doing his scary movie shtick. He is still doing "Don't Be a Menace to Society."
It's true.
While drinking gin and juice in the hood, like he is doing that, like what character?
It's a comedy, yeah.
And you're
crazy.
Like, fuck, like, dude, like take it down a notch.
He's the most distracting part of this movie, by a mile for sure. And yeah, he's in the wrong movie, like you're saying. Like you don't get the direction that they're probably trying to give you here. They're probably not saying, hey, do your shtick from Scary Movie.
Yeah, but they're just like, that's good, let's do one more. Or, I have no idea.
And then the bombs start going off prematurely in the movie, and that's funny. And then people start getting knocked off, and everyone but her is dying.
Yes. And it goes in pretty quick succession.
It does go pretty quickly.
That everybody...
And then she pretty much figures out, oh yeah, they're criminals.
Right.
And then she goes to the dumb cops again, like the time when they came over and he's hiding under her bed. And she's like, what are you doing under there?
And that's just exactly, and that whole sequence of him hiding under the bed and all of that, I was like,
they're like, okay, lady.
Yeah, there was no moment where I was like, oh, he might get caught, and like, how's he going to get out of this? Where like, that could have been pumped up a lot.
I felt it there.
Oh, see, I really didn't. I just never felt like the most interesting moment to me is after she goes downstairs and the exploded money is just floating around in the air, and I'm like, well, they can't talk their way out of this one.
Nope.
And so instead he goes up and he concocts this whole story about how the money's going to go to the church and all of this. Yeah. And she thinks about it and she's like, maybe,
Jones
I don't
University.
know. Like that whole sequence, I was like, this could be 2/3 of the movie to me. Is she going to double cross him? Isn't she? Like, that seems really fun to me.
They could have gone to that earlier. Yeah.
But instead, like, we just spent a lot of time of these guys almost getting caught. But the whole time I was like, well, they're not going to get caught. And that was my prediction. And really, with the exception of all the characters getting bumped off so fast. How many people
get caught in Coen Brothers movies?
And when they do...
Other than Jerry Lundegaard.
Well, I was going to say, and when they do, crazy bullshit happens, right? Like, they get shot in the face in a closet. Like, there's amazing turns of events that you do not expect to be the next thing that happens. And, I think Fargo is a great example of a true crime style story that still manages to go to some places that you don't really think that it's going to. And so when it does... it shocks you. It's really funny. It's really weird. And like you're kind of taken aback. I don't really feel like that there's anything here. That's just it. Other than Marlon Wayans, which again, like maybe that's just a taste thing, but I'm right with you where I was like, this is nothing about this is pleasure.
Didn't help. Yeah.
This is not pleasurable to me at all in any way to watch him in this movie. But even beyond that, it's like nothing is so awful that you're like, they lost me forever.
Sure.
You're like, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine, like
so maybe it's not complicated.
No one got hurt.
Yeah.
They made a movie and it's fine.
Yeah.
But again, like, they could, to the point of one of our listeners, they could have just made a bunch of sandwiches and given them out to hungry kids.
It's a sandwich movie. I think AI is way more of a sandwich movie.
Oh yeah, well AI angers me. AI actually makes me angry.
This is like whatever.
Yeah, this is like what if
they didn't hit on all cylinders like 90% of their other movies?
Yeah, I'm just like, what if you hadn't made this movie?
Yeah.
What if you hadn't made this movie and you just did something kind of different with it?
Sure.
Like.
Yeah, and then like I said, people start popping off and you get that cool shot again where he gets hit in the head and falls over.
Oh, and then he gets hung and then it slides out of the jacket.
And then we get the cat with the finger, like little things like that.
That stuff's fun. Really fun. Yeah. And I really like it. But then
there could have been more of that.
Well, and so there's that. And on one end, I'm like, oh, there's some Coen magic. And then the football player who's basically like fucking Bluto from Labyrinth.
Yeah, what is his
who's
name?
just like, friend mad. And like, it's too much. It's
Lump.
Too,
his name's Lump.
Dude, that's too much. I'm sorry. That is like...
Yeah.
That is for a epic movie or date movie or scary movie. That's not something you should have in a Coen Brothers movie.
I think I would be interested to see who the casting director was for this movie and if they just flubbed it up. If it was just
that's interesting.
Because really, yeah, if you change those two characters, keep the rest.
Yeah. You might still have some complaints about pacing, but it wouldn't be annoying.
Yeah.
I think that's it, is that there's moments in this movie that annoy me, and I don't want to feel that way when I'm watching a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, of course. Well, interesting movie, interesting, complicated failure.
Yeah.
Next week we're gonna get into Inglourious Bastards. That one scene from Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
We'll let you guess the scene, and you can come back and check it out. So please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube, please, just so you get notified every time we have a new one. Our next complicated failures film is going to be The Lovely Bones by Peter Jackson. So stay tuned. Make sure you play along, and we'll see you then.
Bye, you guys.
See you.